Welcome to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos, where leaders discuss what's coming next in satellites and space.
Welcome to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos. My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator today. Our guest today is Anthony Baker, CEO, Global Satellite View. About 20 minutes ago, I got out my phone, and I typed in most popular shows on the BBC. Because I knew you'd be coming on the air. And the most popular show on the BBC is Planet 2, talking about the planet.
Yeah, Blue Planet, yes.
Right. And so I said, well, what does got to do with Anthony here? And it dawned on me, the press release I have in front of me is Plastics, Pollution, and Pirates. Satellite View prepares to tackle humanity's global challenges. A lot of these challenges involve the planet itself and pollution. So what a great opening for our discussion today, isn't it?
No, that's brilliant, because actually it was an inspiration to me. I think the program's gone worldwide. It's being shown in here in America, and they're pushing it around. And one of the things Sir David Attenborough, the narrator, says, just to paraphrase him, is that we now, the human race, has the ability to comprehend the problems we're generating, both with plastics, with carbon. But we also in a position to do something about it. We can fix it, and this plastic pollution issue is something we can fix.
Never before have we had such an awareness of what we are doing to the planet, and never before had we had the power to do something about it. Yeah, it's a great quote. So tell us about your company first.
So we are a startup company. We've been in existence a couple of years, and we've been looking at different fields of Earth observation. Initially, we were acting as consultants. My previous career was in the Middle East, so I was trying to use those contacts to help nations use this new technology, the new space technology. So we were acting as project managers to help people have some place in space, so to launch satellites.
Well, the name of this podcast is Constellations. We're sitting here at the floor of Satellite 2018, so we got constellations and satellites. So I got to ask you the satellite question here: is that, what's the difference between traditional Earth observation services and the ones that'll be delivered with these new satellite constellations?
So the whole thing about new space is the agility of the design and of the companies, the size of the satellites, the price of the satellites. So we're looking at completely different era of satellites. So in the old days, although there was very high-resolution satellites, they were very large. They take a couple of years to build. They cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Now we're looking at satellites that take 6 to 12 months to build. They weigh a few kilograms. Sometimes the CubeSat's just a few kilograms. The ones we're looking at around the 100-kilogram look. And yet they perform almost as well. So they perform at 1 meter resolution versus, the best is around 25 centimeter resolution.
Yesterday we did a podcast with a gentleman who had a degree in economics and philosophy, and I contrast that with your degree. You have a master's degree in satellite communications. It all kind of fuses together here, The economics have changed for satellite observation, and now people are looking at the philosophy of taking care of their planets. It's all coming together with Satellite View, isn't it?
No, I think there's a very big role in environmental uses of satellite imagery. It has been one of the traditional ones. So in the US, NASA's had Landsat for many years. In Europe, they have a Sentinel program where you can actually download the data for free. But the resolutions tend to be quite large, but it's free. It's available on a weekly basis. But in order to expand the market, there needs to be something else. It needs to be a lot cheaper. It needs to touch more businesses. And this is one of the challenges we're looking at.
So we're going from free and weekly to organizations that want more current information.
Exactly. So probably the most pioneering company in the industry at the moment is Planet. So they have small shoebox-type satellites, CubeSats, and they're offering a service of once a day. But traditionally, and even with Planet, then especially their newer launches, the satellites go over at the same time in the day. So traditionally, the morning is the air is slightly clearer, there's a nice shadow, and so most satellites go over any one place. They're sun-synchronous at about 10:30 in the morning. But if you're looking at the pattern of life, if you're looking at economic activity, it occurs all day and all night. So you need remote sensing capability that addresses that. So this is what we've been looking at, but also a number of other companies are looking at that. And there's a second aspect, is if you're capturing images every hour, you need to deliver it very quickly.
So you're trying to provide consistent, reliable, and frequent images to the end user.
Exactly.
When I went to your LinkedIn corporate profile, 2 words popped out at me: data analytics. 2 weeks ago I was at the Tableau Software Conference. They talked about data visualization and data analytics. So how does this all fit in with the services you offer? So
with more and more constellations going up and collecting imagery faster and faster, you can't use the old models. You can't use grey-beard men who look at photographs and say, we've seen this before.
Greybeard, watch it, buddy.
And that's why I don't grow a beard. It would be great. So we need machines to help us process this in a timely way and to concentrate the information. So to extract the information out of the pictures, we need machine learning and automating. And the human element still needs to be in there. To me, I think we're collecting billions of pixels from thousands of locations and then processing them into trends. We can look at the activity of car parks or airports or delivery sites, and we can look at trends. What's the meaningful information and what the insight is when something changes in that trend, and then we can alert an analytics expert. You need to take a look at this. Something's happening. So I don't think the machines are going to be taking over like some people suspect.
When I started writing down the number of pixels and locations and changes, this is almost the classic definition of big data, isn't it? I mean, an incredible amount of information to understand.
Yeah, exactly. This is big data problem.
So what exactly is activity-based intelligence?
So it's looking at the pattern of life. So we are trying to determine what the economic activity is by looking at stationary pictures. Now, there are videos coming along, and some constellations will be launching video images. But you need to convert that into something that end users understand, particularly if you're looking at the stock market or commodity brokers. They want to be able to determine what's going on the ground and give it some economic value. And so we feel that we can help out in this role.
I went to YouTube early this morning and typed in your company name, and I saw some videos with an underwater situation that was disgusting. I mean, if the listeners want to go and find it, I mean, it's not a pleasant sight. It's the incredible pollution off, I think it was Australia somewhere or something. They had these fish in the bottom, and they were eating the plastic. It was terrible.
And it's such a big impact. So there was an article actually quite recently, last week, in The Economist, and they're saying that the value of plastic pollution, or the destruction of value, is $139 billion a year. So it's a big problem. And the fishing industry is about a $50 billion industry, and pirates also is about a $10 billion problem we have.
So we have all kinds of pieces of plastic floating around the world. We've got boats, we've got ships, we have constellations of satellites collecting this information. It sure seems like, and this is a term that's overused perhaps, but artificial intelligence is going to have to be applied to that information in order to make some sense of it, to make business decisions based on the information. Artificial intelligence, does that apply to you then?
Yes, so this is how we're going to address the big data problem. So we train machines to identify features in the images, and from there we can create statistics about what's there. The challenge in the future is whether we can predict things from that. So currently we're indexing the world, and I think Planet said that, and I think this is what's going to the current trend, is indexing the world.
Same problem in cybersecurity, the leap from analytics to predictive analytics, and that's the leap, and that's the tricky part.
It is. So everyone says that space is hard. Artificial intelligence is also hard.
Oh, we know that.
It's not even easy to train a machine to identify buildings or cars and things like that. The training models are very intensive, and there's been some progress you can see on popular applications with faces, but when you start looking at a photograph which has been taken through a telescope 600 kilometers away, it's a little bit tricky. Things tend to look similar.
We were teasing earlier about a gray beard and age, but your company is certainly not a gray beard, only been around 2 years. And what I'm trying to think of is new applications. So what new applications do you have available for government and commercial organizations that weren't available before 2016, 2 years ago?
So I think the big change is addressing dynamic events. If you're only taking a picture once a day at max, and it used to be once every 3 or 4 days, what we can do now, if we're taking pictures on a regular basis throughout the day and the response time is very short, we can look at unfolding events. We can look at flooding, we can look at hurricanes, we can look at deliveries, and this is what's new. So it's almost real-time surveillance, and that's a key differentiator of this new technology.
Well, a lot of the different companies available at this trade show, they talk about value, and there's a value for this and value for that. So I got to ask you the value question too. So what value does Earth Observation Services deliver to a typical customer? What's the value? What do you provide?
It's another layer of information. I don't think there's a single killer application, and some of the value we're adding is fusion of our data with other known data, whether it's mobile phones, social media, some proprietary information that a company might have, and trying to generate a new insight. So how's it helping them? It helps them make better decisions, which can be very cost-saving, etc.
Walked around the show floor yesterday, talked to a bunch of startup companies, and I was going to scratch my head wondering who's going to be around in the 4 or 5 years. What's going to happen in the next 6 or 10 years? So how do you see your Earth observation and your artificial intelligence capability impacting the satellite industry in the next 5 to 10 years? Let's look out here. It's the 2020s. Wow.
So we're a startup, and so we've looked at the technology. So what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years? It's very much akin to your iPhone. One, in the replacement cycle, every 18 months there's a new technology, and at some point that will flatten out. And the key parts of the technology are really the sensor, the camera, just like in your iPhone. It gets better and better every iteration. And also, like an iPhone, the applications. You get more and more apps and more sophistication. You get virtual reality and artificial intelligence apps coming along. So we decided that the most important part to invest is either in the sensor or in the applications, or both. So I predict in the next 5 to 10 years that's the bit that will improve. So today we announced looking at infrared, because we think it has a worthwhile application in plastics. But then there's also some big commercial applications as well. Other companies are looking at the radio spectrum. Other people are looking at what they call hyperspectral. And hyperspectral is, in optical we got red, green, blue wavelengths. Hyperspectral, you're talking about 100 different wavelengths, higher frequencies than visible and optical. So what will change? There'll be more different bands where every band will be looked at. The frequency, we see the planet are mapping the world once a day. We have plans to look at once an hour. I think Black Sky have a similar ambition. We can imagine with more and more constellations that there'll be almost persistent imagery of every place on the Earth in the next 5 to 10 years. So then we have all spectrums everywhere, persistent. You really have a big data issue. So you can imagine that people like Google and other analytics companies that we work with, SpaceNow, will be indexing everything about what they see there. Mm-hmm. So we'll have an index on everything in the world. But I think then the question is, what are we going to do with all this information? And I think that's the real unknown.
Another aspect of your company is this 5-word catchphrase that I see repeated frequently when people talk about you: every nation, a space nation. So this isn't one ring to rule them all, or one company to have all this information. You want this federated or distributed to a wide variety of countries. Is that right?
That's right. I mean, certainly at the beginning, we felt that if you only have to spend $10 million to get a satellite into orbit, plus the Earth station, versus $200 million, $10 million is actually affordable by everybody. And with Earth observation, people want their own point of view. They want to see the information firsthand and not necessarily buy it from a reseller. So every nation can probably afford that and save on buying the information from a developed country.
So these constellations, so who's launching these constellations? Your company or the customers, or where's it all fit in?
So when we started, we didn't have very much capital. So we were trying to help developing nations invest, and we would be the program managers, and we would help them resell that data elsewhere. So we wanted them to be the constellation owners. But when we look at this, the plastic issue, we feel that we should own that, at least in the first generation, because we want to direct it in the right place. We want to help commercialize the data. And so it's necessary that we raise the capital and develop the product.
Here we are at Satellite 2018, Washington, D.C. I walk around the floor here between podcasts, and I talk to startups. And Dawn, to me, you're a startup too, just a couple years. So from a growth perspective, how do you plan on growing and adapt to this changing market in the next 3 or 4 years? I just see constant new press releases on new products and new technology. It's a tough, to put it in nautical terms, it's a little storm ahead trying to figure out which direction to go to.
That's absolutely right. So you need to find your niche. And I think all niches are not really sustainable. So if Planet has launched satellites that can take images once a day, other people are already duplicating that. If we launch an infrared sensor, other people could copy that. So how do you stay ahead? I think the answer is on the analytics and getting close to your customer, finding analytics that meet the customer need. Not just indexing, but find the customer's problem and find where the value add is. And in that, it's a difficult task. And so that's the barrier of entry to other people. I know in London, for example, in the insurance community there's some remote sensing companies which are really embedded, and they know exactly what insurance companies want. And it's hard to break into that market. Coming with a pile of data, that doesn't help the insurance companies. It doesn't give them the insight. They don't have the expertise or want pile of data or images. They want answers to their questions. So I don't even know exactly what their questions are. So I would have to drill in and figure that out.
About 3 years ago, I was doing a radio interview, and someone tossed out the term artificial intelligence. And I turned to him and said, I don't care if it's artificial. I don't care. The intelligence is the hard part. I mean, the analytical ability is really the hard part, where you have to have a human being with a wide background apply mathematical analysis and maybe different types of understanding to the human beings, and that's the differentiator, I think, is just the analytical, and that's what the insurance companies prove, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Just like Kratos or anybody, you need to understand what your customer's problem is to solve it, and it's hard work, especially if it's not space related for us. So finding that application is key. My
daughter's about to buy a car, and she's looking for funding to make that vision a reality. So I turn to you and I say, well, you're running this company. You must look for funding to make your company a reality as well. And so tell us about maybe the startups who are listening to this. You can give them some advice on the pitfalls and some of the strengths of finding this funding.
Yes, I guess I'm more from the old school that you need to make revenues. So we've been trying...
Oh, come on now. Another Tom Cruise, show me the money, huh?
Yes, so we've been trying to, at every juncture, trying to make revenues. We started off with consulting, and then we've been actively looking at grants from Europe, particularly European Space Agency, to try and kickstart some of the technology. But the purpose would be to bring things to market to make money. It's not a pure science project that we're investigating. And likewise with the plastics, this is not a charitable purpose. It has a very good cause, but it's the secondary application, the dual use, which will keep us sustainable so we can help keep the planet sustainable. And so my focus is always on what's the application, how are we going to make money out of that next step.
In your press release, I see plastics, pollution, and pirates. Well, we haven't talked about pirates yet. Probably important. So you have application for pirates as well.
Yeah, we're not talking about Johnny Depp here, dressed up.
Although you could do the accent, something like that.
Maybe. Maybe later.
Yeah, after 5 o'clock, we'll try the Johnny Depp accent.
Yeah, exactly. So the pirates thing, there's quite a lot of technology now on AIS, Automated Information System, I think it's the acronym. And so every ship over a certain size has to have a beacon on it, and that can be received by satellites. Companies like Spire and Exact Earth are doing that, so they can keep track of every large ship. The interesting thing is when they switch, when the AIS beacon goes off. So it could be deliberate or it could be accidental. If it's deliberate, that ship is doing something wrong, probably. So you want to be able to trace that. So there's a number of methods. Ours is not unique. You can use synthetic aperture radar, SAR, or you can use infrared. So the ship propeller pulls up cold water, and so we see the heat differential. So we can see the wake of ships. So from that, we can determine its speed and its direction. So when the AIS goes off, the next thing you want is a visual on that ship, and to find out what's going on, where it's going, and so it can alert the Coast Guard to do something about it. So it's pirates, it's trafficking, people, arms, it's illegal fishing. So that's why it's a big problem, and that's why there should be a business there to help minimize this problem.
You've had executive-level positions in some pretty big companies like SES. Has that helped you with this kind of startup, flexible, dynamic company, or has it given you abilities to see markets that people don't normally see?
Yeah, I've always had interesting roles. So in AsiaSat, it was a small company, and in more medium, small startup mode, I guess. I was actually in New Skies, which was a spin-off from Intelsat. And then SES acquired us, so it was very much at the early stage. SLSat, I was, I think, employee number 4, the first executive there, and so there in the 5 years I was there, we built it up to 88 people, 2 satellites, and run by the locals. So that and it's a profitable company. It's not a state-sponsored company. It's a profitable company. So I've always had that experience, and I hope to replicate that success in this company.
And the goal is to tackle humanity's global challenges. I mean, you got the good skill set to do that, don't you?
I think every company can do some good. So we want to be sustainable, but we want to do some good things on the way.
Well, Anthony, unfortunately, we're running out of time here. I'd like to thank our guest, Anthony Baker, CEO, Global Satellite View.
Thanks for listening to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos. If you like this interview, please subscribe, tell a friend, and give us a review.